My name is Alice. My husband, John, and I are married for almost 10 years. When I was feeling down about not being able to have a child, John always comforted me, saying, "Look at the bright side, we can do lots of things just the two of us. Let's enjoy our time together." Since we both loved traveling, we often went on trips to hot springs when we had time off. We were enjoying our life together, just the two of us, childless as we were. I thought these happy days would last forever, until that day. I work in the office of a nursing home. That day was nothing different to any other day. I was busy working from the morning. While working, I was thinking about what to make for dinner, maybe mashed potatoes and soup, since I still had some potatoes and beans left. That's when it happened. Alice. My boss, Daniel, suddenly called out to me loudly. I wondered if I had made a mistake, and quickly replied, yes, but I couldn't help feeling tense. As I started to walk towards Daniel's desk, he, looking quite alarmed, came running towards me instead and said, "It's an emergency. Your husband." What? What happened? Your husband fainted at work. You should go to the hospital immediately. Don't worry about your job here. I rushed to my car and drove to the hospital as fast as I could. My heart wouldn't stop racing all the way. We had a normal conversation just this morning, and I saw him off as usual. Please be safe. I prayed as I drove with tears. The hospital was only a 15-minute drive away, but it felt incredibly far. As soon as I arrived, I ran to the reception desk. Then, I was led to the designated treatment room. "John." I called out, but my voice didn't reach John. I was too late. In the eerily silent treatment room, only the sound of medical equipment echoed. Looking at the faces of the doctor and nurses, I realized what had happened. The doctor approached me and said, "You're his wife, aren't you?" "I'm so sorry, your husband." I collapsed, crying on the spot. It seems he had a heart attack. They explained more, but I couldn't hear anything else. I couldn't believe I'd never see John again. We promised to always be together, but that promise was broken now. The reality was hard to accept. This must be a dream. John must be playing a surprise on me. These thoughts were going around my mind. Next thing I knew, I had passed out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Beside me were my worried parents. "Alice, are you okay?" My mom asked gently, holding my hand. "Why am I in a hospital?" "Oh, right, I heard that John had fainted." And then, John was. As I remembered everything, still dazed, I started to cry. Seeing me like that, my mom hugged me with tears in her eyes. I cried out loud. I don't know how long I had cried. I kept crying, realizing I had to accept the reality. John was to never come back. I bit my lip and vowed in my heart not to cry anymore, thinking that John would be sad if I didn't say goodbye to him. The funeral arrangements were prepared by John's parents. John's father, Steve, did most of the work, since John's mother, Martha, seemed as exhausted as I was. God can be so cruel to take him so suddenly. My friends who came to the funeral said as they cried, "Alice, you don't have to hold back your tears." But all I could say was, "Thank you." Inside, I wanted to cry too. As his wife, I had to greet his friends and colleagues. And I had decided not to cry today, as I needed to say my final goodbye to John. While greeting the guests, I noticed a woman I had never seen before. She was petite and very beautiful. I thought she might be one of John's colleagues and went to greet her. "Excuse me, are you a colleague of my husband?" I asked. She replied, "Yes, I worked with John." "I see, John was very grateful for your support," I said. But before I could finish, she interrupted me. She said, "I'm sorry to bring this up so suddenly, but I'm 4 months pregnant with John's child." Excuse me? I was unable to comprehend what she had said. Seeing me in shock, she snorted a laugh and continued. "I'm carrying your husband's child. Do you understand?" "Yes, I guess." I managed to reply, confused. My mind went blank, not knowing what to do. Steve had noticed something was wrong and said to the woman, "Are you one of my son's colleagues? Thank you for coming today." "Oh. Are you John's father? This is perfect timing. I came today to tell you I'm pregnant with your son's child," she said. She had raised her voice a bit. People around us had heard her voice and had started murmuring. Steve was also shocked by her unexpected words. "What are you saying at a time like this?" Some guests were visibly angry. Then the woman said, "I'm saying this because it's this occasion. I'm carrying John's child. This means I'm entitled to inheritance, right?" Everyone was speechless at her unthinkable statement. We were still in the middle of the funeral. Obviously, it wasn't the time to discuss inheritance. "Hey, young lady. What are you saying? Stop it right now." John's boss tried to stop the woman. "Even the rights for the house and all the assets belong to my child, since my child has a right to inheritance," she continued, unfazed. She kept on causing a scene, regardless of what anyone said or even her bosses attempted to stop her. Then she made an unbelievable claim. "John and I were in love. He always said he would divorce and be with me. This child is the proof of our love," she shouted for all to hear. At that moment, Martha, noticing the commotion, came over and asked, "What's going on? What's all this about?" The woman approached her, rubbing her belly, and said with a smile, "This is the only grandchild you're going to have since your daughter-in-law couldn't have one. Aren't you happy?" Martha was shocked into silence. Seeing this, I thought to myself, John's parents must have wanted a grandchild and might be swayed by the news. But Steve said firmly, "Enough of this. It's my son's funeral. Consider the feelings of those around you. Leave right now." He seemed really angry, with veins popping on his forehead. "I can't believe it." The woman was shaken by Steve's shouting. Maybe she thought saying she had his grandchild would make them accept her. Then she started saying, "Why are you yelling at me? A daughter-in-law who can't have children is useless, right? I must be more suitable as a wife. That's right, isn't it? John doesn't need such a wife like her. It's all your fault," and tried to grab me. But she was quickly stopped by the people around her. "Stop it. I'm pregnant. Let me go. Don't touch me," the woman screamed. At that moment, Martha began speaking to the woman. "Is it really my son's child? If so, we have to share the inheritance, don't we?" "That's right." "Finally, someone understands," the woman said, with her eyes shining. "But to inherit, we'll need a DNA test. My son isn't here anymore, so we need to confirm." "That couldn't be a problem if the child is really John's, right?" Martha asked with a smile. "No need for a DNA test. We were truly in love," the woman replied as she started to tremble. "You're shaking, are you okay? Did something happen?" Martha moved towards her, staring at her with cold eyes. The woman's face turned red. Then Martha's expression changed and she said, "Causing a scene at my son's funeral, claiming that the child is my son's, you know what will happen if it turns out the child is not my son's child, right?" Intimidated by her fierceness, the woman couldn't respond and finally broke into tears. "We really were in love," she sobbed, still insisting on her story. "Enough already. How disgraceful. My son would never love someone like you. I know he loved his wife very much." Martha scolded her, embracing my shoulder. "We want to say goodbye to my son in peace. Could you please leave now? Can her boss take her away?" John's boss dragged the woman out, and we were able to proceed with the funeral, which ended without any other incidents. After the funeral, I finally felt the reality that John was no longer with us. I cried alone, looking at our photos, for all the tears I had held back. Later, John's boss came to my house to apologize about the woman. From what he said, it seems she had unrequited feelings for John. She didn't care about what others thought of her and aggressively pursued John. She would always try to be near John at social gatherings, which made her feelings for him quite obvious. But John never cared. John's boss and colleagues had warned her, but she wouldn't listen, and everyone eventually gave up. His boss apologized, saying they regretted not intervening more. But the fault lay not with the company, but with that woman. I told him I was suing her for defamation. What she did, ruining John's final farewell, was unforgivable. He understood my feelings and then shared memories of John. John always talked about you. You might not remember, but whenever he had too much to drink at parties, he'd start boasting about his wonderful wife. You were really loved. You're a lucky woman, he said with tears in his eyes. No. I was the lucky one to have such a wonderful husband. I replied as my voice was trembling. Later, Martha told me something else about the woman. It turns out she was indeed pregnant. But of course, not with John's child. She confessed to sleeping with other people and getting pregnant on purpose. And in a fit of spite, she claimed it was John's child, thinking it would lead to a divorce. She didn't even know who the real father was. After everything came out, she had lost her position at her job and resigned. It was her own doing, now jobless and facing a lawsuit from me. After John's boss left, Martha shared a story with me. There was only one time when we said we wanted to have a grandchild. But John got angry at us. He said, "Don't ever mention that to Alice. If you do, I'll cut ties with you. Even if we can't have children, being with Alice is enough for me." Those words made John's parents realize that as long as their son was happy, that was all that mattered. Martha continued. At that moment, I truly understood how much he loved you, Alice. That's why she was confident that he had never been unfaithful. I love you very much too, Alice. You're like a real daughter to me. That's why I want you to remarry and be happy while you're still young. She said that to me, but I just smiled and shook my head. John is the only one for me. Hearing that, Martha began to cry out loud. I embraced her, and we both cried together. Years have passed since then, but I still think about John all the time. Even now, I sometimes wonder why he left me alone, why I have to live in a world without him. But I know I have to keep living. John was an only child, and his parents must be feeling lonely without him. I wanted to do my part in filial duty in place of John. Today is John's parents' 40th wedding anniversary. I surprised them with a cake. And as a gift, I arranged a trip for them to enjoy together. John's parents were very happy. I thanked them for giving birth to and raising John.